All right. So, of course, I'm specially for this meeting here, only for this, flew in from Netherlands, from Netherlands. Yeah, and
do some work while you're in town.
yeah, so, I know, but thanks to Alec for letting me speak here and being on this meeting. And yeah, I'm Martijn van Dijk. Mostly been working on MvvmCross, some other open source projects on the internet. You might know me of that if you're using Xamarin already. And you can find me on GitHub if you want. Check out on Speaker Deck, or find me on Twitter and email me if you have any questions afterwards. So normally on a normal day I'm working for Xamarin, a consulting company from the Netherlands. We're doing consultancy throughout the world and helping mostly in you know, like advanced projects, getting people, helping people with their troubles and the problems. And yeah, I think it's great working there. But the real reason I'm here is I'm going to talk on MvvmCross, because that's one of the things I do in the daily life. I'm working on the open source project. Who here already heard of it or used it? Okay, so there's quite some people not, right? So MvvmCross is a framework made for mobile Xamarin apps, which enables you to use MVVM, which is an architecture, and also has a lot of helpers and classes that you can use to really ease your development. So MvvmCross started a while ago, and it actually started with Stuart Lodge, the guy who first forked it off of Monocross, which was an MVC framework, in 2012, and that gradually evolved into MvvmCross in 2013. So while Stuart did a lot of work in the beginning and was you know, he really made up the foundation of the framework. After a while, you know, if it gets a big open source project, you can't maintain it alone. So more people came in. Cheese Baron, the famous Cheese Baron, joined the project, and me as well, and many others. In fact, there are even more than 120 contributors to MvvmCross right now, and I think that's quite impressive for an open source project. So what happened after that? What we did is we started adding support for frameworks, or we started adding helpers for more than just the core, which was Xamarin based. So in some moment in time we decided to add support for Android, and then specifically the Android support packages. And those packages enable you to use, for example, Android material design back on all the devices, and that's of course great, because then you get your app gets on how do you call that, like on the equal level on all the Android devices. And we also added support for forms. Forms is, I think it's a totally different world. You have like forms and native, and you really have to look at what the purpose is of your app to decide if you want to go for forms or you want to go for native. But if you want to go for native, I would definitely recommend using a framework like MvvmCross or any other MVVM framework. So the next step was to make a separate infrastructure for the plugins. And what happened is that on the road we added a lot of new plugins which you can use to really plug in features into your app. And that means that, for example, if you have a camera on iOS, on Android, on all the other platforms, you can just drop in the plugin for that and use these features on the native platform within your PCL package. And the latest addition is iOS support, and in that are some libraries, for example a side menu which slides open, some helper classes to really make it easy for you to start native development. And more is to come. So why would anyone use MvvmCross? And I think it's mostly because it's cross-platform. All the major platforms are supported, so there's really there's nothing left out or not possible when you want to use this framework throughout your whole application life cycle and throughout your apps. And it's also the most advanced MVVM framework. What I just said, there were more than 120 contributors, but there's also a really active community on GitHub, on Slack, and on other places. So I think if you are looking for help, I haven't seen a better framework more supported through the community than MvvmCross. More is also supported, not supported, but it's really fast release cycle. We normally do a release every month, and I think that's really great for keeping up with the latest developments. So Xamarin, they update the toolchain, Android updates, iOS, everything throughout the line, and we really are keen to keep up with it, and I think that's also really great in comparison to other frameworks. So who's using MvvmCross? Well, you have Microsoft and Xamarin themselves. One great example is, for example, on Build last year, they were demoing the UWP app for the first time, and they were using MvvmCross there to demo it. So I think that says something about the majority of the framework, and there are a lot of other companies using it as well. And yeah, if you are using it, you can, if you want, you can write me a message, and I can put up the logo in the slides and on the GitHub pages. Maybe you know those two people. I think Scott was even here for NDC, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I spoke to him time ago in Norway when he was there for NDC, and Miguel as well. They're using MvvmCross in their own example apps, and I think that's really great that those two community leaders are doing that. So I saw some people here not using MvvmCross, but have you been using MVVM in general as architecture? No? So I'll explain what it does. Anybody who's not used it used MVC or MVP, that kind of patterns? Yeah. So in general, I think those patterns they all look a bit the same. The purpose, is to make it easier to develop your app, make some separation of concern, and that's also what MVVM does. When you have the app, you can split it up into a view model and a model, and that's also where the name MVVM comes from. And what you have here is, for example, button, and what the button does if you press on it, it goes to the binder, fires off a command on the view model, can then access data on the internet, put that in a model, and after it comes back, you trigger a property change, and it will update the text in the view. So the great thing about this is that you have the separation of the concerns. So you see that the view can be a native view. On Android, you can have your own layout, material design. On iOS, you can make your iOS controls. You can use the native buttons, the native text boxes, everything native. But the code to get the data from the internet and put it into the models is shared on iOS, Android, and all the other projects. So that's what what makes MVVM so great. And I think that's also why it's the best architecture so far. And of course, you see that over time, this architectures, like evolve, and new architecture comes up. But so far, this is the best I've seen. So any questions about this on the architecture? Yeah.
The binder, is that something provided for you by the platform?
The binder is provided by the MvvmCross. So the binder is a standard thing in MVVM, but it's implemented by the project, or like by the plugin you use. So in case you would use another MVVM platform, maybe MVVM Lite or Prism, they also have their own binder, but the architecture is the same.
Martin, question.
Yeah.
So doesn't Xamarin Forms ship with Xamarin have its own MVVM framework?
Yeah, they do.
Should we just? Oh, what's the difference? I'm a bit confused about MvvmCross and its relationship with that.
All right. Interesting question actually, because you can combine MvvmCross with Forms, but what you say is true. MVVM is baked into Forms, so they have this own navigation service, data binding, and that kind of stuff into Forms. But the difference is that in Forms it's really how do you call it? It's really simple. It's really small, and you can only do the basics. With MvvmCross, there's so much more than this, and the possibilities are just way bigger. So all the platforms are supported, which means Android, iOS, Windows, Xamarin Forms, and Mac. But it's not limited to this. If you, for example, take Windows, you can then think of UWP, console applications, whatever you can think of. Windows Phone, the older versions, Windows Runtime. So everything is supported, and that's also what makes it so easy to, if you have like a product and you want to roll it out to all the platforms, it's so easy to use. And that's what I also see when I'm working for companies building up a big project. They need to support all those major platforms. It makes it really easy to share code across them. So the highlights of MvvmCross are that it's really flexible. It's PCL based. It will become .NET standard based, if you know what it is. That's the new addition to the .NET, how do you call it, maybe foundation, or but it's another story. It has support for IOC, dependency injection, value converters, bindings. It's really testable, and the plugins, of course. And there's a lot more to it. And what I think it makes the framework really great, but it's also that it makes a high learning curve, because there's so much you can do, and it has support for so many things. And that's also why you really need to look into how you build up your application with MvvmCross. But I'm gonna showcase how you can do a really small sample of that yourself. So if you want help on getting to learn on that, here are some links. What I would recommend everybody is going on to Slack and join the Xamarin channel if you're not in there already. There's a lot of great guys in there. Even, for example, Miguel himself was the CTO of Xamarin. Sometimes pops up if there are specific questions, not too much, but he's there. So let's just take a look at setting up a really simple project. So I'm just going to open up Xamarin Studio here and start adding a library. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a portable library, not a shared library. I like the portable libraries. Shared is, it's just, yeah, how do you say, nobody does it anymore. And let's call this Sydney, since I'm here now. And I'm gonna call this Sydney.core, and core is the shared part of your app. And it's just a name, but it's a convenience we use for core for all the shared code, and the platform specific name for the Android or iOS apps. So this is alright. Gonna create it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a package, and I'm going to search for MvvmCross starter pack. You see here the starter pack, and as you can see, there are a lot more libraries for MvvmCross. But if you want to start a new project, I would recommend using the starter pack. What it does for you is automatically include all the files you need to get started without you having to do everything yourself. So I'm just going to add it, and you see some classes will be added in here. I hope the internet works. Oh, nice. Well, the internet worked because the app class was added here. I hope everything is safe because it's gonna crash now. Yeah, it did. So let's just remove this here. And as you can see, we have our main entry point for the application already set up. This is already there, and it's really convenient for you. You don't need to like make your own startup point and register everything yourself. This is in place. So let's start an Android, or let's add an Android project. Add an Android app, and I'll call this Sydney.droid. Yep, that's alright. And I'm also gonna add the starter pack here. And just as happened with the core package, you will see that a splash screen will be added, a setup will be added as entry point for your Android app. So those kind of things happen for you. And this is all enabled by NuGet. So what it does on the background is NuGet has a built-in script where you can include files, where you can include content for your app. And well, it crashes again. Always great. I'm running alpha, by the way, so that might be the problem.
Alpha was a little bit sketchy with iOS today.
Was it?
Alpha, yeah.
Ah.
An older project that wouldn't compile, but compiles perfectly on beta.
Okay. What I like on alpha is if you add packages, you can select a version. Don't know if you've seen that. You can select a version down here.
That's new.
Yeah, that's new. So it did add this here, so I'm gonna remove the main activity because we have our own activity now. And I'm gonna make a reference to core so that the Android app can find it. And let's see, select the emulator. That's weird. No, that's not necessary because that's the attribute.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for some reason it complains here. Well, what I do is I've a demo here, and I'll just switch over. So here I have the core and the droid, and let's try running that. So this is just a demo application which is on GitHub, and what you can see is this text box, for example, here is already data bound. So I can just go into core, into my view model. I have the login view model here, and if I set a breakpoint on username and put something in, I can see that the value is spawned and that the property is set. So it's really easy for you to get started with data bindings. So if I just take a look at how it works, let's take a look at the layout. You see here, this is an edit text on Android, and what you can do is just say mvxbind, and you bind in this case the text to the property username in your view model, and that's all. So let's just continue this one here and press login. So you see, for example, all the buttons, all the things, all the UI elements are bound to properties on your view model, which makes it really easy to share code on iOS as well. Any questions about this so far? I guess it's all clear. So as I just showed, on Android you can just say mvxbind and bind the property to something on your view model. On iOS, unfortunately, you can't really hook into your chips or storyboards, but you can into the view controller behind, or if you're using how do you call that, like normal controls, you just create them by yourself, then you can just bind that directly. So what you do then is say, I want to bind the label to the title on the view model. And the same is of course also available on Windows and all the other platforms. So if you want to know more about the bindings, just go on to MvvmCross.com, find the documentation about bindings, and everything's there. So how does it work to display another view on iOS and another view on Android when sharing the same code base? We do that through presenters, and presenters mean in the opposite as the MVP pattern, that you have one presenter per platform, not one presenter per view. So what it does is it customizes view presentation on the platform. If you have material design on Android, which looks great of course, you can enable that through the presenter by using a different activity, and on iOS using a view controller or whatever you like. So it really enables you also to customize your view without having to change the shared code base. If you want to have different behaviors on the platform but still share the code, that's something we call presentation hints. And with that you can give a hint to the platform that it should do a specific action. For example, if you have a navigation stack where you on Android want to pop back to the root, but on iOS you don't, you can create your own presentation hint saying, hey, I want to close the back stack on Android, and just ignore that one on iOS. So it's really simple to customize the behavior of your view there. And some examples are tabs. One really common example is the hamburger menu, where you slide out the menu and that kind of stuff. At least on Android it's common. You also see it on iOS. So as said earlier, there are a lot of plugins available. You see a few here, but there are many more, also from other open source contributors. For example, one that I use and I think is great is the Bluetooth Low Energy plugin, and that one, for example, enables you to use Bluetooth Low Energy on iOS, Android, without having to do it twice. So you just have one common interface for using it, and you use that in your common code, in your PCL library, and nothing more than that. So one plugin I wanted to talk about is the Messenger, and that's one that's used quite a lot, because when you have view model navigation, you can pass on objects to the next view model. But what if you have something you want to send to a different view model without having a direct relation to that view model? And that's where the Messenger comes in. So you can send a message to a view model which has subscribed onto the message and can handle stuff in there without having to navigate to it. And what you can do is, you see here we have a location view model. It injects the MVX messenger. So this is also how dependency injection works. You set up a token and subscribe to a location message. And when that location message is published, it will come into this method here, receive the message, and you can do something with it. For example, in this case, well, if you have a location, you can set a latitude, longitude, and maybe, you know, like if you have a map on your view, you can just, you know, adjust the map and it works. So if you have multiple views on the screen, it's also really neat to use, so you can send on messages.
Question about that, sir.
Mm-hmm.
When you publish from one view model and the other view model is still not, I guess, visible, it will still get it, right?
Yeah, it will still get it, but you need to at least instantiate or have been onto that view model first. Otherwise, you know, the token wouldn't be set.
Okay.
So what you can do is you can construct a view model yourself. For example, an app start if you want it to be available, or if you have been there while navigating, then it's subscribed.
Just POCOs and memory, so you pass one view model to the next view model. So
Yeah.
A to B by the constructor. So you might have a view model that has username and password. As long as that is serializable down to JSON or to a string, you just pass that over to the next view model.
Yeah, we don't need that, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you just have straightforward navigation, then you can just pass in a string or whatever. You can even pass in complex objects. They will get serialized, and you can use them again in your next view model.
Right, okay.
So by default, MvvmCross uses convention over configuration, which means if you have a login view, it will automatically be connected to the login view model. That's of course really good, really easy to use, but not always, how do you say, you know, if you have like a view with a different name, it won't work. And what I would recommend is using generics, because when you use generics, you automatically have typed names as well. So when you have a login view, you can say MVX activity on Android, connected to a login view, but also to a login view model, but also to a different name. And if you have properties like a username in there, like I just showed in the example, it will get strongly named, strongly typed, and you can use it in your view. So it makes it easier for you to develop. You get help of the IntelliJ sense and that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to use the generics for some reason, you can overwrite your setup file and you know, put in your own naming in the view model lookup. Another thing is inversion of control, and MvvmCross has its own inversion of control where you can register interfaces and implement this in your platform-specific projects. So, as I just said in the example of the camera, if you have a camera on iOS and Android, you can make one common abstraction, say, hey, I want to take a picture. So you just say, define an interface, say take picture, and what you do is you register it as a singleton in your setup of the project and add the implementation for the Android platform and the iOS platform there. And when you've done that, you can use the take picture command from within your PCL project. So it makes it really easy to implement platform-specific features without having to do, for example, compile constants or that kind of stuff. And the good thing is you can also use dependency injection to get those interfaces back. As you see your view model, for example, I earlier showed the messages. The same you can do here. Inject your interface. You just need to make sure you've registered it before and do some stuff with it. So we started working on support for Android support packages some time ago, and here you see some of the specifics of it. But what I really want to show is a cool thing called the MVX caching fragment activity. And what it does, it's making sure if you're using fragments that they're handled the correct way. Because if you know fragments, well, they have their own life cycle. Within an activity, you can have multiple on the screen, and it can be quite hard to manage them and keep the states of them. So what we did is we took that job out of your hands and really made sure every situation was handled correctly. So if you rotate your screen or you go to the background with your app, we will make sure that the fragments are saved and cached in the correct way. So I'm just going to show that, and let's go back to the demo. Take away the breakpoint here. So continue. Login, and the login view was actually an activity. So an activity is just on its own, has its own life cycle, but when you have an activity, you can't have multiple on your screen. So that means if you have a tablet like this, you maybe want to have two lists besides each other. And with fragments you can do that. You can split up your screen and make separate pieces, and even have multiple of one type on your screen. So this here is a fragment inside an activity. And if I now open the menu here, this, what you see here, the view, is another fragment. So you have one activity and two fragments on the screen. And this makes it really easy for you, because let me just show you how this works. I'm going to go to the fragments here, and what we just saw was the home fragment and the menu fragment. So let's start with the home fragment, and as you can see, this is a really simple small file. When you normally would have to use a fragment, it would be much bigger than this. What you can see is here, there's an attribute defined with the host, where it will be shown on the screen, and if it will be added to the backstack. So that's all you need to do to show this fragment on the screen. The same goes for the menu. See here, that's the attribute. So the host is a main view model, which is connected to an activity, and we will show it in the navigation frame. And I think this way it's just so much easier to develop fragment apps than normally with your own handling of the whole stage, the whole handling of the rotation, the things. So that's really convenient if you want to use that. It can maybe be a little bit hard to understand, but if you have any questions, you can also ping me on Slack or Twitter or whatever, and I'm happy to explain it. So that were the specific libraries for Android support. But you might wonder there are more libraries. So here you see another few. What's happening with MvvmCross is that it's based on inheritance. So if you, for example, take the card view, we don't need to make any specific bindings for that because it inherits from an image view. And you can already bind to an image view with images, with text, that kind of stuff. So what you see here is already provided. One thing that's important when making apps is testing, of course. And what can be difficult is when using IOC to set it up in your tests. And with MvvmCross, you can really easy just make sure, just call the base and the IOC is ready to go for you. And I think that's really great when implementing tests for your app. So I've just shown you a little bit of MvvmCross. It's much bigger than this, so it's also a bit tricky to use. So I would really recommend to keep it simple. Try to use the things that already exist, because they also get maintained for you. You don't need to keep up with all the development yourself. The huge community behind it will maintain your app or your app infrastructure for you. So another thing is really separate your concerns. So make sure that you don't put everything in one huge library, make it single purpose, and try to look at the internet at GitHub if it's not a library already available. If you want to get involved with MvvmCross or any other open source project, go onto Slack, follow the link there, join the MvvmCross channel, there are other channels as well. Join LinkedIn, GitHub, or follow influencers on Twitter. And it would be great to see some pull requests, some stuff like that from as many people as possible, so we can really split up the what do you call that? Like the
burden, load.
The burden, yeah, that's a great word. The burden. Okay.
It's real.
The burden is real.
Very real.
Yeah, so that would be great. So that was it for now on MvvmCross. If you have any questions, I would like to hear it.
What's the analysis plugin?
Sorry?
You mentioned they use the analysis plugin.
Yeah.
To find fault problems. What is that?
That's a plugin based on Roslyn.
Yep.
So it has some fixes for common MvvmCross problems. An example would be for, let me just think. We have a helper method called setProperty, which checks if your property you're going to set already is the same value as it was before, and then doesn't set it.
So don't raise notify property change on something when the value is exactly the same.
Right.
Itself.
Right.
Because otherwise, if there's a performance penalty on redrawing something when it didn't need to redraw.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's just a helper, and there are many more available. I'm not sure which, but you can find that on GitHub.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's just a set of helpers based on Roslyn to fix your app.
So you're using this in lots of commercial projects?
Yeah.
In your data. Do you find that you have to break out of MvvmCross often or at all? Tweak it specific for your project?
No, not so very often. let me just think. There are some specific cases, mostly with animations and stuff, where I need to do custom stuff. And but for the rest, it's mostly there. And one thing I do to make sure that everything stays compatible is just if I find anything in a project while working on it that can be improved, I just go right away on GitHub, make an issue, or make a pull request right away. So that way I make really sure that like all the projects can benefit from it. Yeah.
Is it easy to do the Android activity transitions?
Depends how you look at it. I mean, like
Like the low-pop ones where you just annotate the XML and then pass the parameters in the activity?
I guess you can just do that like normal. I mean, why would you need anything special?
So, like, I'd have to manually do the activity navigation though? Don't you do view model navigation?
Right.
And so how do I hook into that navigation lifecycle to add that custom parameters to the
Right.
activity?
Now I understand. So what I said earlier about the presenter, what you can do is just inherit from the normal Android presenter and override the show method. You can just get the base there. You get back the activity that's returned and customize it there. So that might be the easiest way then.
Yeah.
Any more? Guess not, but you can always contact me on email or Slack or whatever. So if you have any questions afterwards. Yeah, thanks for listening.